Good afternoon. We continue our work. The topic of the next event is suing the SSU of Ukraine for classifying and non-submitting e-declarations of its staff members to the NAPC. Vitaliy Shaboom and Olena Scherban are our guests. The first one is Olena Scherban. I'm Olena Scherban. I'm the lawyer of the NGO Anti-Corruption Action Center, the member of the board of this organization, and I will tell you in detail about the situation with the Security Service of Ukraine. Immediately after the first wave of declarations, submitting declarations finished, we found out that at the website of the national agency there are no declarations, e-declarations of the civil servants of the SSU. Only some civil servants of lower rank submitted their declarations. We started to find out what happened. We submitted several requests to the SSU, to the national agency. We received the answers, and we found out that the SSU, together with NAPC, illegally violating all the norms of the law, have not submitted their e-declarations to the system of NAPC. We found out that back in June 2016, the Security Service of Ukraine made a resolution. Mr. Payerkov, who's the deputy head of the SSU, who's an expert on top secrecy, he made the resolution that the e-declarations are classified documents. Then in October, the Security Service created their own electronic system for collecting e-declarations and submitting e-declarations there. Why is it illegal? The law on preventing corruption puts a requirement, especially when we're talking about e-declarations of 2015, that all the high civil servants, including high civil servants of the SSU, the head, the deputy, the heads of the departments, their deputies, and heads of all the regional departments of security service and their deputies had to submit their e-declaration during the first wave. At the same time, when they were making all these declarations classified, they violated the norms of the law. The law on preventing corruption says that for some persons, some servants of the Security Service of Ukraine who are involved in counterintelligence and operational activities, there should be a special way of submitting e-declarations, because their names, last names are secret, and their e-declarations cannot be open. They should be submitted in a special classified regime, and they are to be classified. At the same time, the leadership of the Security Service does not fall under this category according to the law, and that is why we will demand to open these declarations. Secondly, there's a violation of the law by the Security Service, and this because they created their own system of e-declarations. The law on preventing corruption provides for one register, single register of e-declarations, and the National Agency on Prevention Corruption is managing it. Creating any other alternative databases or registers is illegal. The declarations which are classified and civil servants which are classified should also submit their e-declarations to the single register. The method of submitting the declaration should be such that would make it impossible the leakage of any information. But in fact, this procedure of ensuring the secrecy of the declaration should be approved by the NAPC. The national agency has not passed such a procedure, has not approved it, adopted it. And today they created favorable conditions for the security service for non-submitting e-declarations, and they created favorable conditions so that other state bodies can avoid submitting e-declarations. That is why our requirements are recognizing the decision on making such e-declarations classified illegal, to recognize the actions of the civil servants of Security Service of Ukraine illegal, related to creating such an alternative system. We also want to make sure that the national agency approves the procedure for this to be happening according to the law. We believe that all the declarations of the Security Service of Ukraine are to be on the website of the National Agency on Prevention Corruption, so that everyone could monitor and review them. We as an NGO, we have to substantiate in the court why and where our rights were violated. So we have the right for public monitoring and analysis of following the procedure for submitting declarations. Using that right, we go to the court to demand it from the Security Service and the National Agency. The National Agency, besides not approving the procedure, but it had to initiate making such civil servants responsible for non-submitting the e-declarations into the register, and initiate the procedure of making them responsible. But instead, what we see from our correspondence, the national agency is doing nothing and is not planning to do anything. The only way to force the national agency and the Security Service of Ukraine to follow the laws is to sue them. Thank you, Vitaliy Shabunin.
Good afternoon, friends. Olena had described almost everything, but I would like to emphasize on two things. One story about declarations which are hidden, actually absent in the system of counterintelligence, those who work undercover. This is right. We need a procedure. We may discuss the procedure, but there are no excuses for the leadership of the SBU service why the declarations are absent in the system. Deputy heads of the SBU are appointed by the open degree of the President of Ukraine. I think everybody in the country knows that Mr. Dmytro is deputy head of the SBU. Why we cannot see his income? If everything is okay with his income, then why to hide it? Why the SBU leadership violates the law and hides their incomes? During 2015, the paper declaration by Mr. Hrytsak was published by SBU, but at the moment when lie in a declaration had become criminal offense, the declarations had become classified. Why the SBU leadership is afraid to disclose their earned wealth. I do not wish to know the income of people who defend our lives, who work undercover, who work in the counterintelligence. I wish to know the income of leadership. If they have nothing to hide, then why they try to hide it? The different stories about Nazakam, leadership of the National Anti-Corruption Agency had to start bringing to responsibility the SBU leadership who had not submitted their declarations. Instead of this, Nazaka which is not doing this, actually covers the criminal offense, which should be punished with 2 years of prison. Maybe you would like to ask questions, the questions. Юрій Шульженко, Правоташукач, newspaper. A question to Mr. Shabunin. The Ministry for Economic Development and Trade, we know that your organization receives funding from the United States. I tried to find the Central Investigation Bureau declaration and have not found, but whether being Central Investigation Bureau leader, you would like to publish your declaration. The Central Investigation Bureau leadership has to follow the U.S. declarations. The Ukrainian leaders should comply with Ukrainian legislation. They do not deal with the counter-intelligence operations. They try to impose restrictions on businesses. They wish to hide their incomes, which is a criminal offense in line with Ukrainian legislation.
Espresso TV channel, we are now trying to combat corruption. Please explain why then you personally are hiding in the declaration the property of your wife, 2 houses and a plot of land. Why is that? A lady from Espresso TV, 2 houses of my wife under Espresso is under Borispol. That's a lie, open lie. There is 1 house which was built this year. It is not hidden. It's in the register of real estate, which was opened thanks to the efforts of our organization as well. There are no 2 houses. That's a lie from your part. You are asking this question. By the way, one more thing. Submitting e-declaration is not required from non-public servants. My e-declaration is on the website of the Center of Combating Corruption. Unlike that, the leadership of the Security Service, Mr. Demchin and Hrytsak, their e-declarations are to be on the register. Non-placement of their declaration there is punished by 2 years of imprisonment. But please tell us, you've examined the global world practices. To what extent now, when there is the state of war, how correctly it is to make public such e-declarations. What does it have to do? The question to you, in the global practice, there's no such a thing that e-declarations are hidden of people who are fighting corruption or who are involved in internal affairs. Mr. Dmytro, Mr. Gryzak have nothing to do with the war. Also, the Department of Economy of the Security Service have nothing to do with the war. Those people who are in counterintelligence, who work on the territory, occupied territory of the enemy, that's a different thing. Another thing is non-submitting declarations by the leadership of the security service. It is punished by imprisonment up to 2 years, and it's a corruption crime. Can you tell us from which funds is your organization financed? And is that true that one of the owners of the fund is Sekvarilidze? Sorry, to your information, Global Fund of Fighting TB and AIDS is financed by the states of G8, a big global fund. It's not Sekvarilidze, but G8, Britain, USA, Germany, France. What's Sekvarilidze? What are you talking about? The financial report of our organization is on the website of the Center of Anti-Corruption Action Center, with all the sums donated by every donor. And we are looking for having same transparent information from media who are asking such questions. But back to the law. Placing my e-declaration report, financial report of our organizations is not a requirement of the law. That is our goodwill, which we demonstrate to so that, but at the same time, the leadership of the security service, Mr. Dmytro and Mr. Gryzak, violate the norm of the law, and that is criminal, that is the crime. Do you feel the difference? Any other questions on the topic of the briefing? Thank you. As to the procedure and transparency, your colleague, who's a lawyer, I checked in different registers, that's probably unofficial lawyer. Will you be fighting with the so-called corruption of the monopoly of lawyers advocacy? As to the time of the press conference, on the website of the SSU, it was informed about that situation back in October. Why you are suing only now? Maybe it's too early to have this press conference. First, you have to win the case. You have lost cases on Indar. For example, I will start from this. We are attracting the attention of the media to the situation when the senior leadership of the body which is fighting corruption is committing the corruption crime. I believe especially the arguments of the Security Service of Ukraine, which they are using to explain a violation of the law and committing of the crime by their leadership, Mr. Dmytro and Mr. Gryzak. As to the SU, we submitted this on the 5th of January. We did not do it in November and December because we were collecting the additional information. As to the loyal association, I have as a lawyer, I have the right to present the interests of the organization in the court. As to the monopoly of advocacy, this does not refer to the tasks which our organization is executing. And if you have a desire to fight the monopoly of advocacy, you're welcome, but that's not the task of our organization. Mr. Dmytro has all the powers to fight monopolies. That is why we are paying him salary from our taxes. Other questions from other journalists? Independent portal of news. On the website of the Ministry of Economic Unity, the NAPC is mentioned as the recipient of the money from the USA. How do you explain the scandal with the disappearance of $2 million, which were provided by the USA to reform the prosecution bodies? She was reading from a piece of paper. Answering your question, that was a criminal case which, as of now, is closed. That was the case because of which Mr. Shokin was fired. That is the case which made Ukraine to be ashamed. That is the case with which the ambassador of the European Union and the ambassador of the USA, they came up with the comments that that is beyond the reason. The Center of Anti-Corruption Action have never taken money to reform the prosecution office because we said that that body is impossible to reform. The corruption clans could be only eliminated. We were right. The reform of the General Prosecution Office didn't take place. And the result of that is Ivanushenko's case, that was flushing the Ivanushenko's case. That was the case which was closed. The Anti-Corruption Action Center has never taken money to reform prosecution office because it is impossible to reform the prosecution office. Do you have any questions not on the topic of the press conference? It's on the topic of the press conference. Because how much money did our organization receive in this register? Who's saying it? Who's saying it? What's mentioned there? That you received 2 million. What website indicates that? Thank you.
Що не дописали там в листочку?
They didn't add it in your piece of paper.
Колеги, або останнє запитання завершуємо, або вже завершуємо.
It's the last question or we are finishing. Okay, let's give the chance. Yulia Chernikova, Arguments of Week newspaper. I would like to explain defending my colleagues. That's not strange that they're asking such questions because the person who's fighting corruption should be honest and clean in that. And that is why we have such questions. Don't laugh. Please answer. For example, I remember the fact when Soros Fund
пару років тому було
Soros Fund a couple of years ago reported that they funded your structure, but you did not mention. That's not true. You are saying not true into the cameras, because on our website and financial report we reflect the funding from Vidrodzhenia, from Renaissance Foundation. What Soros reported and what you reported, there's a difference. We have the information about funding of Renaissance Foundation, not Soros Fund, but Soros Fund. There is a world network of Soros Fund, and we have Ukrainian Renaissance Foundation. In our report on financing, we clearly state the sources of funding, and the Renaissance Foundation is one of the providers of such funding. What's the difference? Thank you for English translation and for online broadcasting of that press briefing. What's the difference? 2 million. What 2 million? 2 million which we invested in you. Which 2 millions who invested? What does IMF, Renaissance Foundation, have to do with that? Which perspective? Which 2 million? We have the budget which is 5 times smaller. That is why we had the question. Renaissance Foundation has never invested 2 million. Just get together and write the messages correctly. Any other questions from real journalists? Thank you, sincerely, thank you. Let's finish here. Thank you.